Hi there. My name is Emily Dubin Field, and I'm a mom thanks to surrogacy. I have been in your shoes before, and I deeply believe that when you go through something in your life, then who better than you to share about it and do something about it? So that's why I'm here today. I want to first start off by thanking the American Fertility Expo for inviting me to be part of this weekend's presentations and awesome conference. My husband and I first started to try to have a family 9 years ago, almost 10 years ago. And then we got into the world of assisted reproduction for about 3 years before we welcomed our miracle daughter via our surrogate. But going back all these years ago, there were no conferences like this. People weren't really open about their infertility struggles. And it's been amazing to see over the last, I'd say 5 years, there's been a big change in that. There's still a lot more that we can do and have big ways to go. But, you know, I'm here because when you go through something, then who better than you to do something about it and share your story about it and help others. So I try to be as real as I can and open and honest as I can. And so, you know, big shout out to American Fertility Expo for putting together this type of conference and disseminating all this information out to you. I really wish I had something like that. So we only have a short period of time together today. So before we begin, I want to make sure I give you my email. It's emily@fieldfertility.com, website fieldfertility.com, Facebook and Instagram are the same. And for our presentation today, you will not see any slides, anything fancy, because I believe this conversation is so personal. Pre-COVID, my husband and I actually used to welcome prospective intended parents like yourselves into our home and into our living room with snacks and drinks to have this conversation because it is so personal and it is so intimate. And I want it to feel like that. So I want to feel like I'm talking to you from my home to your home. And so I was asked today to talk about the 10 biggest questions, most frequent questions that I get asked about surrogacy as an intended parent. And so we are going to begin. One of the main questions, and I'm going to start here, is, so question number 1, how much will this really cost? So by now, I'm assuming that you've talked with your fertility doctor, you've done some other research, and so you won't be shocked or fall on the floor when I say that surrogacy costs about $150,000. Yes, that is very true. And the amount for surrogacy, of course, there's a range for it. You know, I even like to say about 120 to 150,000. But when I say that, I'm not including the cost to make your embryos. So that's sort of separate. For our conversation today, I'm under the assumption that you are making or have made your embryos, whether it's with your own egg and sperm, donor egg, donor sperm, donor embryo. So that cost is separate. I will be completely candid and frank with you. Our daughter cost us $200,000. Our daughter, Ava, just turned 6. So we're going, and it took us 3 years to get here. So we're going back, you know, 9+ years ago or so. And so costs 7-8 years ago when we got into surrogacy are different now. The costs have only risen, unfortunately, over the last number of years, but it cost us $120,000 with the surrogacy, and then it cost us $80,000 with all the IVF. And boy, did I go through a ton, as I'm sure so many of you have who are watching this. And that $80,000 was, our insurance covered nothing. So maybe some of you have insurance that will cover some of this, but the rounds of IVF, the failed rounds, the IUIs, the surgeries, the inseminations, the uterus scraping, the biopsies, 3 doctor's appointments a week, all the hormones. And so that's what that cost, about $80,000. And then the surrogacy cost us $120,000. And so now the safe number is about $150,000 because costs have gone up on every regard: surrogate compensation, insurance for your surrogate, everything about the industry has just kind of gone up. And It's really tough, and I get it. There are ways that you can reduce those fees. I'm not going to get into those as part of the top 10 questions today, but I am always available and a resource. So please feel free to reach out, anytime. Emily at Field Fertility. You can also just go onto our website, fieldfertility.com, and contact us through that way. We've been running our legal and consulting business for over 5 years now. We launched it on the 1 year of our daughter, and it's been amazing. We've helped over 1,000 clients, and have talked to countless prospective intended parents like yourselves. So that is about the cost and the amount of money to have ready for surrogacy. And like I said, different than the embryo creation process. And there's a lot of variable costs that could make that go up. And like I said, there are other ways and funding opportunities and grants and interest-free loans and other creative ways that so many intended parents have used in order to afford this. I get it. And I just, I want you to feel my heart in this to you, that truly surrogacy is, draining financially. It's emotionally difficult, spiritually difficult. It can be tough on your relationship, but it's also incredibly beautiful and incredibly special. And seriously, every day I look at my daughter and I just thank our entire village that it took to get her, and that very, very special woman who carried her for us. Thanks to science and thanks to an amazing woman named Melissa, we have our Ava. And I wish that for you. I really, really do. And so does my husband. That's why we got into the industry, to take our personal experience combined with all our professional expertise and bring this to you. So that's just a little note I want to say. Okay. Second question I get asked a lot, and it's definitely one of the first questions I get asked. How long will it take in order to have my baby in my arms, right? That's all we want, And it's so hard and it's so unfair that so many other people can just so easily do this, right? And not for us. So I'd say on average, and what I have seen from all of our clients, as well as what the industry says, about 1.5 years from when you find your surrogate to when your baby will, knock on everything, be born. Could be a little less than that, but I'd say in terms of setting your own sanity and understanding the timetable in front of you, kind of what it can be. It can take a number of months to find a surrogate. That's when you find her. Then there's medical screening and legal clearance and all different things. And then finally, when all of the administrative and legal and psychological and money aspects are all handled, kind of all the behind the scenes, and then finally your surrogate gets turned over to your fertility doctor, who will then put her on a hormone schedule to do the IVF, to get her body ready for the embryo transfer. So that can even take a few months to get her body ready for it. And then the embryo transfer happens and you really hope it works, and it doesn't always work. For us, it did miraculously. Many of our clients, it does, and for many, it doesn't. So I'm also not going to get into what do you do if you only have one embryo or you have multiple embryos. So that's a whole other more personal discussion. Again, reach out to me if there's something specific. I'm happy to chat with you more about that too. So, and then hopefully that first embryo transfer works, but if it doesn't, then you're going to, have month, 2 months, 3 months. It depends what your doctor says to get her ready again for the next embryo transfer. And of course, there's the pregnancy. So 1.5 years until, hopefully that baby's in your arms is a safe bet. Like I said, we've seen some less and we've seen a lot longer. but that's what I would say. And I think it's a pretty solid number. And again, always go to your medical professional. Your fertility doctor is one of the most important people on your team to your baby. I really hope you feel great about your fertility doctor, that you really trust him or her, that you have good access to him or her. Our doctor, I felt like she was a big sister to us, and she had been through so much with us that she wanted us so badly to get a baby too. And she said, Emily, I am not going to approve a surrogate for you that I wouldn't approve for my own sister or my own best friend. And when I felt that reassurance from her, it really made me feel good, because, you know, she does the medical screening of her, but also your fertility doctor, if you get a really good one, will also talk to her and really get to know her. And I will never forget, after our surrogate went in for her medical clearance, so still, she wasn't like totally cleared and she wasn't absolutely going to be our surrogate, but our fertility doctor called us and she said, you got a fertility Olympian. She's amazing. And, you know, everything about her, her personality, her medical records, her history, her delivery history, to how good her uterus looked and her lining worked. And for me, I was like the ultimate IVF failure. Nothing worked with me. So to get that she was an Olympian, well, that was like the greatest thing I've ever heard. So that's a side note, but your fertility doctor is going to be the one who gets your surrogate pregnant and stays with your surrogate through the first trimester. That's usually what happens. Side note, sometimes for distance, you could have a local monitoring clinic closer to where your surrogate lives. Again, there's so many different ways that this can go. So I'm just trying to stay general for this, but your fertility doctor is going to be there with you through about 10, 12 weeks of the pregnancy. So feel really, really good about that. But again, I'm going to go off on all little side notes as I think of other really important things to share with you. But that was question 2. How long will it take? Question 3, and then from here, it's going to lead into question 4, 5, 6. So the big chunk. The question is, how do I find an amazing surrogate? There are several ways, and I'm going to talk about 3 ways that you can find your surrogate. 1 is through a surrogacy agency. 2 is through a concierge matching service. And 3 is independently without an agency. So with that leads us into question number 4. Well, how do I find a surrogacy agency? And are they all good? And how do they find their surrogates? So this is the main way that intended parents find a surrogate, is you hire a surrogacy agency, which is what Greg and I did, my husband and I did. We interviewed 3 agencies, and then we ultimately hired one of them. I recommend, even if you're going to go independently and use a sister or a friend you found on the internet, I really strongly recommend that you interview 2 to 3 agencies, no matter what. You will learn a ton about surrogacy and what to expect and how to really navigate this, what's most important, what's not. So I highly recommend you spend that time talking to these surrogacy agencies, the case manager, the surrogacy agency owner. I would first start with asking your fertility doctor for a list of agencies that he or she recommends. Now, sometimes those agencies are recommended because the doctor could partly own that agency or have a really long-standing relationship. You never know. You want to ask about conflicts of interest always in this industry, with everybody, with your attorney, with your agency, with your doctor, because why he or she is giving a referral is important to know. And if they're doing everything ethically, they should have 0 reason to say, yes, this is it, and this is why. You know, when people come to us and utilize our consulting services, I navigate people to sorted professionals because I know firsthand how good they are. And I know how many are subpar or aren't somebody I would want to work with. And like I said, remember, we're having a conversation in our living rooms with each other. I'm talking to you as personally as I can with trying to give you all of my professional knowledge that I can. So get that list from your fertility doctor. The other thing you can do is there's an organization called SEEDS, the Society of Ethics of Egg Donation and Surrogacy. You can cross-reference that list to see which agencies are part of that society. I always like that. I'm happy to let you know if I know anything about those agencies. You can also, if you want, go down the rabbit hole on Facebook. There are surrogacy agency reviews groups. Now, again, there are surrogates who work with agencies that are part of those groups that are going to tell you all the good reasons. And there's, you don't always, what I'm basically trying to say is you don't always get the most unbiased when you go in these groups. That one person could have had that bad story, but so many others don't. So I would do your best to do research on your own and all these other various ways and find 3 surrogacy agencies that you want to talk to. And talk to at least 2 of them, if not 3 of them. If you go onto our website, for fieldfertility.com, under resources, free resources, we actually have a agency questionnaire that you can utilize. And what the heck do I ask these agencies? How do I know? How do I understand who's a good agency? Who should I work with? Who shouldn't I? What are red flags? What makes a good agency? So we put together a really comprehensive list. And I recommend kind of going through that and then asking each of the agencies the same questions so you get a good feel for it. But number 1, you want to know, how do these agencies find their surrogates? How do they recruit them? Who do they accept? What's their criteria of who they accept in a surrogate? And what are all of the various background checks that they will do on the surrogate and her spouse or partner, should she have one, because that person is a really important piece of the puzzle, not just the surrogate, if she has that person in her life. So you'll want to know all that background screening that they do, and do they do that screening all before you're introduced to her and shown her profile, or do they do some of it, show you her profile, and then do more once you're like, yes, I want to move forward with her? So there's 2 ways they go about that. Usually the reason for that is financially. Some of the larger agencies have deeper pockets that they can screen their surrogates more, and some of the smaller agencies that can be really fantastic. So our agency was actually one of the largest and biggest. And we just went with that because that's sort of what reassured us. But now that I've been in the industry, I can think of some solo practitioner agencies that recruit some of the best surrogates, and those surrogates feel so supported by their agency and by the team around them. So I wouldn't just say, oh, I must have the biggest and best agency, or that one's too small. I would talk to several of them and get a feel for them. And again, download our agency questionnaire for that. So that's one of the ways you can find a surrogate. Question number 5. Going back to question 4 of how do you find a surrogate, we talked about through an agency. So the other thing that I mentioned is, and question number 5 is, how do you find a surrogacy concierge, and what does that mean? So there are several companies that have a nationwide database, basically. They work with the agencies, and you go to them and you say, I'm looking for a surrogate. And an agency might say, oh, it's going to take you 2 to 6 months to get matched with someone. It could take a while. It took us about 4 months to find Melissa. And so it really depends on where you're at and the timing on how long you might have to wait. So that's a question in the agency questionnaire. You'll ask the agencies. But some people are like, well, I don't want to wait that long. And I've been doing forever. And I have a little more cash that I could use. So you could hire concierge where you pay a premium, probably about several $1,000s. It depends on the level of service you want. And they will reach out to all the agencies, and based on your criteria and what you're looking for, give you profiles. And you could find a surrogate within a few weeks and be matched with someone. depending on how picky you are. And again, I could digress and go down all sorts of rabbit holes, but I'm not going to for purposes of our conversation today. So again, that's a little more of a premium, more VIP level type service. But you get access to a lot of agencies versus hiring one agency. So I've seen it done all the different ways, and people are happy. It really just depends on your particular circumstance and your financial circumstance and where you're at, how, to go. So you get what I'm saying. Okay. My next question, number 6, how do I find a surrogate independently without an agency? So I get this question probably more than anybody else. I'm not more than anybody else, more often than any other question, because surrogacy is really so expensive. And the agency fee alone, part of that 150 could be $20,000 to $40,000. It just depends. Now, I loved working with an agency. I recommend to everybody to work with an agency, but I really understand in over 5 years of being in this business and talking to so many people that sometimes they just, you can't afford that. I get it. It's so, and also there are people who say, well, my sister said she'd be my surrogate, my best friend, my cousin, my sister-in-law. So that's one way independently, but then there are other people who go, I just want to find somebody and I don't want to use an agency or a concierge to find this amazing woman. And I'm going to look for her on the internet. I'm going to cast a wide net to my friends and family. This is, you have to be open about your story and be willing to be personal and share it. So some people I know aren't, but let's say you are. So you could send an email, Facebook post out to your whole community. This is our struggle. This is what we've been going through. And we're looking for a surrogate who meets all these different criteria. And you can find that online. I can let you know all the basic criteria that you must have, that are like must-haves in a surrogate. And see, you never know. Somebody might be interested in this. There's also Facebook groups where you can like match with someone. Now, again, I'm giving you information that nobody likes to talk about or that nobody will tell you. So when I was talking about how do agencies find surrogates, and you want to ask them how they recruit them and how they accept them. So many surrogates are not accepted to agencies for a variety of different reasons. Now, most of those women still want to be a surrogate for a variety of reasons. And they'll go to another agency and see if that agency accepts them. And if not, then they might go into a matching group and still try to find someone. So that's not to say that there aren't incredible women who could be an amazing surrogate, but that for one reason or another, an agency didn't select them to their program. So when you're meeting a total stranger, there's a slew of other information that you want to do in order to qualify her, as if you are an agency. You're recruiting her in, you're screening her, etc. So there's a lot of things that you'd want to do. But I just like to mention that women who want to be a surrogate, they're going to still probably try to find a way to be one, even if an agency doesn't accept them. So think about that. And it's not to say that we haven't had clients who have found amazing women on the internet, but I'd say more often than not, the independent cases we have, it's a friend, a coworker, sister, sister-in-law, cousin, somebody kind of connected that helps with sort of that trust factor when you don't have an agency doing all the heavy lifting screening. But I can help you to know how to screen and what to look for. So that's another way that people find surrogates. So that rounds out through question 6. All right, we got a few more questions to go. Number 7, what are the legal aspects of surrogacy? So my husband, Greg, who's amazing and the best dad ever, and side note, the fertility issues were mainly on my side. Greg had some, but his were solvable. Mine were horrible. And I married a man who was destined to be a dad. And I couldn't make him one for a long time. And it was really, 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 really hard, on top of everything that was already so hard about it. So yeah. Okay. So Greg is an attorney, and he's been practicing law for, I think, 17 years now. And for the last 5 in art, assisted reproduction technology law. He's amazing. He's always happy to do free legal consults. So I don't know where you're located. And surrogacy is different by every state, every country. Family Inceptions has a really great website infographic about surrogacy by state. I'm in California. The laws here are the best, more than pretty much any other place. So many international people come to the States and come to the surrogacy-friendly states to find their surrogate. So I'm going to just talk about from California law perspective, and Greg again can talk so much more. And if you're in another state, other country, we have colleagues who are awesome that we could refer you to if you want to ask about specific legal questions for your state or for your country. So I'm just going to kind of generally talk about California. So there's 2 main legal aspects of surrogacy, and they're done in 2 parts. So the first part is done right before you get to your embryo transfer, or right before your surrogate starts all the medical parts of surrogacy. So you will hire your own attorney who specializes in this area of law. You are not hiring your friend who's a divorce attorney. You yourself, if you're an attorney, you are not representing yourself. A bankruptcy, nope. You really need somebody who specializes in this area of law. And especially when we get to part 2, which is the judgment part and declaring you as the parents. So this isn't, a typical area of law. There's really specific ways that this is done. So your attorney and your surrogate will have her own attorney, no matter what. Any attorney you talk to that says, yeah, I can represent both sides, huge, huge no, not allowed, not ethical, horrendous. So you pay for everything for your surrogate, and she waives that conflict of interest that you intended parents are paying for her legal representation. Anyway, again, rabbit hole, stay on track. There's so much I could tell you. So your attorney will draft a contract, 40, 50 plus pages of all the terms. Whether you're with an agency or doing independently, there will be a surrogate benefit package put together, different term sheet, everything from her compensation to how many embryos are you transferring, hopefully 1, to what are your beliefs on termination reduction, to travel restrictions for her, you name it, it is part of this contract. And your attorney reviews it with her attorney reviews it with her until there's a final contract, everybody signs and notarizes, and then your attorney issues legal clearance to your clinic. And that's the green light that everybody's been waiting for your doctor and your clinic to start getting your surrogate's body ready for the embryo transfer. So that's legal, part 1. And part 2 comes when hopefully surrogate is nice and pregnant. You hear that super strong baby's heartbeat, which is like the greatest ever. And about 12 weeks, 14 weeks, your attorney will come back into the picture and say, great, it's time to start the court paperwork to declare you as the parents, and that the surrogate doesn't have any rights and the surrogate's husband or spouse or partner doesn't. And so there's legal part 2. It's called the pre-birth order in California. Some other states are post-birth order. Anyway, I'm not going to get into that, but basically this is the paperwork that goes to the courts, and you finally get a judgment that then goes to the delivering hospital. So the hospital knows who's mom, who's dad, who's mom, whatever your makeup is, single parent, heterosexual, gay couple, who's parent, who goes on the birth certificate, who gets those wristbands at the hospital, who cares for the baby and makes all the medical decisions about the baby. So those are the 2 main legal aspects about surrogacy. There's a lot more to it, and it's very specific based on where you live, if you use donor egg, if you're gay, whatever, different countries. So there's this is a multi-pronged answer, but basically to let you know that there are 2 parts of the legal process that are done, and that there's always 2 attorneys that must be involved. Great. Okay. Question number 8. I get a lot. Can I trust my surrogate? Even if she's my sister. So this was a really, really hard one for me. I was like, how am I supposed to trust a stranger? What does that mean? So it goes back to some of the first things I was talking about in hiring an agency or independently, and how you find that right woman, and how she's screened, and the questions she's asked, and the background checks, and the psychological screening, and the financial screening, and who she is and where she lives, and how open and honest you feel she is. You know, there should be several conversations and opportunities to learn more about her, to meet her, to talk to her, and for her to meet with many professionals that really help trust her a little bit. And it's a hard one for sure. You know, I'm like, I'm not living with her. I don't know her. I want to watch what she's doing at all times. She gets in a car every day and drives. There's so much that can happen. Ultimately, we personally had a really good feel about our surrogate. And we met her 2 kids that she had, who were 3 and 5 at the time. And we said, do that again. What you ate, what you did, you gave birth to full-term, healthy, beautiful babies. Your body knows how to do this. And so I know you'll take care of your body. I knew about her healthy lifestyle and healthy eating. I mean, I could see what she weighed. I saw, you know, and all the different clearances that had to happen. So trust is difficult, you know, but I would say if there's at any point you have a red flag or something feels funky, this is when you have a village around you to help support you. Hopefully you don't have that during your journey. And, you know, in the initial process, you might go, you know what? She's not for me, or, you know, and this is when you can go to your agency, your attorney, the mental health professional, and talk through some of the stuff you have. So the village around you, I think, helps with the trust and trusting her as best as possible, which leads to this next question that I get kind of goes together. It's actually a question I asked too. And I know people are scared to ask this question because it feels kind of weird to ask, but I get it. And the question is number 9, how will I know she won't take my baby? I felt that it was so strong. I have talked to so many clients who feel that way. And this is what I want to say to you, because somebody said this to me and it made me feel a million times better. They said to me, Emily, surrogates are women who can get pregnant. They can look at their husband and get pregnant easily. Their body does it. And if they want to have a baby, they'll have their own. They are going to want another brother or sister for their own children. They don't want your baby. I was like, huh. It made so much sense. I had never thought about it that way. And it was really, really reassuring. And also, in talking to our surrogate at the beginning, and why did she want to become a surrogate? She loved being pregnant, but she didn't want another baby. She and her husband were done. They had 2, but she emotionally didn't feel done. She wanted to have another baby and provide that for somebody like me who couldn't. So again, agencies screen for this. The mental health professionals screen for all the right reasons why a woman wants to do this. And she is not going to run away with your baby. You might hear those horror stories or those Lifetime movies. And when things like that happen, which I definitely know various kinds of situations that have been in the news or in the industry, it's so rare. And there's usually so much that went wrong that I know you won't encounter. In fact, there have been more intended parents who say, I don't want the baby anymore, than there are surrogates who want to take the baby. Surrogates never, it just never happens. I mean, I guess I should say never, but you know what I'm saying. And it's, so I know I just kind of blew your mind up when you heard some intended parents, but there have been situations like that for one reason or another. and the baby has to be adopted. And there have been more intended parents and surrogates. Like I said, we've represented hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of surrogates, met so many at conferences, and they're like, this isn't my baby. I don't want this baby. I don't want that responsibility. If I want my own, I'm going to have my own. So I share that with you. Question 10. And again, I mean, I could probably go through 10 more questions with you, but question 10, in terms of the top 10 questions that I get asked the most about surrogacy. What do you wish you would have known? So I get this a lot, and they'll say to me, Emily, it'll go to Greg, okay, knowing what you know now, what do you wish you would have known? Would you have done anything differently? And what I share with people is, there's a lot I didn't know, a lot that I learned along the way and have learned since. But what I did do right, and what my husband and I did do right, is we had an amazing village of professionals around us. First class professionals around us, and that everybody wants the same thing: healthy baby, healthy surrogate. And everybody's on the same page to make sure the relationship between you and your surrogate is strong, medically, that she's healthy, the baby's healthy, that there aren't hopefully complications or things that can happen. So it's definitely something that I feel we did really, really right. So what I wish I would have known, it kind of answers the question, kind of doesn't, but other things that I really didn't think about was that the baby, I mean, I knew that the surrogate's OBGYN and hospital close to her would be delivering the baby. But I didn't think to research like who that OBGYN would be. I didn't think to research the delivering hospital. Because, and saying this, it's really, really, I mean, I think it's really good to do. But yet, if there's an issue, you say, you know what, I'd rather a different doctor. You have to see the health insurance and, the doctor in network for that. But a hospital, or making a hospital, choosing a different hospital for delivery, or you want to have her live close to a different hospital, but what does that mean? And putting her up in housing, again, that's a whole other thing that some people do. But for the vast majority, baby is born near where the surrogate lives. And I knew that. And we just got so lucky with who our OBGYN is and who our delivering hospital is. And we had top level NICU. And again, those are all things that I would choose if I was carrying the baby myself and my husband and for our family. And because it wasn't going to be the doctor in Los Angeles and the hospital in Los Angeles. So something I wish I would have known is that I wish I would have thought about that. I wish I would have looked into it. We got really lucky. And also, I think, should a different decision, if needed, to been made, again, we have our village of professionals around us, and we would have been able to have the right conversation with our surrogate to figure that out together. Because you never want a surrogate to feel like you're telling her what to do. She's a grown woman who's smart and a mom and, PSA president or a military wife. And so, it's a weird dynamic because she's a peer to you. Our surrogate was older than me. Sometimes surrogates are way younger than intended parents. So, you kind of want to get as many conversations done ahead of time. And so that's just definitely something that, I wish I would have known. And, I think a lot of the other questions and answers and some of my digressions, I think have answered a lot of that too. So again, there's so much more that I can say. I really hope this was helpful. I hope I shared some information with you that you hadn't thought of, or that's maybe going to help you ask that next best question to take you on that next step to your baby. Like I said, surrogacy is challenging, emotional, financially, spiritually. It's beautiful and magical and incredible that this can happen for us. We remain very close with our surrogate and her family. In fact, Melissa and I actually co-wrote a book together, shameless plug. It's called Experiencing Surrogacy. You can see my baby Ava. We actually at 8 months of pregnancy, we did a photo shoot together because I didn't get any tummy photos. And so this was like a great way to do it. We did it near her. Our surrogate Liz brought a photographer out there. We loved it. Some people will do it like before a medical appointment when you're all together or afterward. And we wrote a book together, Experiencing Surrogacy, Perspective and Advice from a Surrogate's and Attended Parents' Pregnancy Journey Together. It goes through each of our, it's the same prompt answered from each of us and our different perspectives. And at the back of the book are a bunch of tips that we would offer to other intended parents and other surrogates. So definitely check that out. Get on Amazon, but you can link to it from our website. So wishing you all the best on this incredible journey ahead. Reach out anytime. I'm rooting for you and, you know, just wishing you all the best. Again, contact me anytime, Emily@fieldfertility.com. Thanks so much for your time and for joining me today.